had this ability about him, but now that he's gained the consistency, it must feel really good.
Yes, exactly.
Broadcasting live from the Capital OTB studios, this is Racing Across America with Seth Merrow.
We'd like to thank Gulfstream Park for their sponsorship of this program and some of the other programming and events here at Capital OTB. Gulfstream Park's championship meet features great racing now through Florida Derby weekend at the end of March. Good morning and welcome to Racing Across America on this Saturday morning. I'm Seth Merrow. Thanks for joining us. It is a Saturday morning. However, I am actually in the studio a few days ago, pre-taped this. I have a little trip out of town, visit some family down in Arkansas, going to swing down, see a nephew, great nephew, play a little basketball, senior in high school, doing very well. They have a little tournament this week, so I'll get to see 3 games. Normally, if I'd gone down to see a game his senior year, you know, with the high school schedule, 1 or 2 games a week, I'd probably catch 1 game. But with the tournament, I'll get to see 3, and I'm looking forward to it. Last week, the nephew, in a game, tied for 6th all-time in Arkansas for assists in a game, had 17 assists. Sometimes he looks a little too much. I watch the games on YouTube a lot, and sometimes I think he's looking a little too much for the assist because he's a very good shooter. But a generous point guard, certainly helping out the teammates. And again, 17 assists. So going down for that, but I'll be back in next week and leading into the holidays. However, given the fact that out of town, I thought, you know, it's towards the end of the year. I thought maybe do a little recap of some of the races and news and whatnot for 2025. Look at some of the important races that may play into year-end honors and whatnot. Have a string of some Saratoga races as well that were very important, but I always like to, you know, review the hometown track, and so we'll look at some of those as well. And then I say some news and notes and more. So that'll be over the next hour or so as again we move into this weekend, which don't forget is the last weekend at Aqueduct before their holiday break. They're going to take a couple weeks off and they'll be back. But Oaklawn underway. So 2 of my favorite tracks this time of year, Tampa now, which has been open for a couple of weeks, and Oaklawn opening up this week, adding to my excitement for the wintertime. They're 2 of my favorite tracks all year long, but in the winter, I think they add a lot of value. I think they're fun to play. Oaklawn has that change in the schedule where there's kind of 2 meets. They're going to go December right into early January, take off most of January, come back for a second meet essentially, which was a good idea, taking off much of January, because down there they can have some weather that freezes the track, and that has been a situation for a while. So I think that the change in the schedule will work out nicely for Oaklawn. But again, they're in the mix this weekend. Should be fun. All right, let's take a look, as I say, at some of the notable races from this past year. I wanted to kick things off early in the year. It's coming up in just a few weeks in 2026. It's going to be fun to see who shows up. But the Pegasus has become an interesting early season race for some of the, you know, bigger names that aren't going to, you know, go to the sidelines necessarily for an end of the year and then come back springtime. They are offered this January race, and last year down at Gulfstream in the Pegasus, it was White Abarrio getting it done for Safi Joseph and company. White Abarrio had won the 2023 Breeders' Cup Classic, the 2024 season. A little bit of a mixed bag after having won that Breeders' Cup, but then came back early 2025 and got this score in the Pegasus. White Abarrio wins. Locked runs second. Skippy Longstockings third. Saudi Crown was in there. Mystic Dan was in the field. So it was a nice group of 11, and White Abarrio does it pretty easily. Now, subsequent to that, wins the Ghost Zapper in March down at Gulfstream, and then winds up 4th in the Metropolitan, 4th in the Whitney, and 4th in the Jockey Club. So, again, started the year very nicely with the Pegasus win in January. Didn't wind up as lucrative as the rest of the year continued, and again had the controversial scratch in the Breeders' Cup. But again, it was a nice way to kind of kick off the year with a nice field there in the Pegasus and Wade Barrio getting it done. So wanted to just kick back to that, which is, as I say, become a nice handicap division race early in the year, and will play out, I would think, that way again in just a few weeks. Let's roll from that to, again, another race down at Gulfstream, and one we were down there for, actually. We were down for Florida Derby weekend, doing a little OTB on the road. And in the Florida Derby, we'll watch the stretch run here. It's going to be Tappan Street over Sovereignty. Off of this, Sovereignty was coming out of a win in the Florida, in the Fountain of Youth, excuse me. And so Sovereignty went off as the favorite. But it was a late run. Tappan Street subsequently went to the sidelines and is a talented runner. But I thought the nice late run in the Florida Derby from Sovereignty was going to set him up very nicely for the Kentucky Derby. We'll subsequently see how that turned out. But it was Sovereignty and Tappan Street, 1-2, Tappan Street winning the Florida Derby. The notable note here, as the year comes to an end, Tappan Street back on the work tab for trainer Brad Cox, Winstar and company, and look forward to him, who he went to the sidelines after this race. He'd had a very nice career. After the Florida Derby, it was 3 starts, a couple of wins, and a second. So looking forward to him. Again, the only horse that finished in front of Sovereignty last year, Tappan Street, looking forward to his return. But in the Florida Derby, again, he got the best of Sovereignty. But as I say, I thought it was a nice run from Sovereignty, giving the whole setup and whatnot. Also wanted to take a look. It was our friends at West Point Thoroughbreds and Sandman. Same day as the Florida Derby, and I've talked about it before. It was kind of fun. It was late in the day. The racing was over down at Gulfstream, and we all gathered in that breezeway at Gulfstream, and we were watching the big screen with the West Point folks, Tommy Bellhouse and Jason Blewett, and a group of people, and all rooting Sandman in the Arkansas Derby. Sandman, also notable with the Arkansas Derby win, kind of brought the big social media influencer Griffin Johnson kind of into the mix. He's been voted owner of the year by one of the racing organizations. He followed Sandman up to Saratoga. He was putting a lot out on social media where he has 1 million, some kind of followers. So that was notable as well. But again, Sandman, Jose Ortiz on board for Mark Cassie, getting it done in the Arkansas Derby. Subsequently came out of that and 7th in the Kentucky Derby, 3rd in the Preakness, but then off the board in the Jim Dandy and the Nashville Derby. But as I say, it was just kind of a fun end to the Florida Derby day for us, sitting there watching on the big screen. Our friends at West Point and company, as I say, getting it done in the Arkansas Derby, one of the early season 3-year-old stakes leading into the Kentucky Derby. That was a lot of fun. And as I say, that social influencer, I think, brought some new eyeballs to the sport. Some people kind of have boo-hooed and when he was elected owner of the year. I kind of get it, but again, it's a guy who I think has only been good for racing. I don't know whether it's a huge metric, but I think he has brought some new eyeballs to the sport. So again, that was part of the Sandman story as well with Griffin Johnson. All right, as mentioned earlier, Kentucky Derby, which saw Sovereignty versus Journalism. Sovereignty going to be the number 18, Journalism the number 8, and Baeza the number 21. Kind of 1, 2, 3 from this race throughout the end of the season on the 3-year-old scene, it seems like. But Sovereignty, as I said, I liked him coming out of that race in the Florida Derby. I thought it was going to set him up nicely, and I was very happy with the $17.96 Sovereignty paid. Junior Alvarado, Belmont, Sovereignty getting it done over Journalism by a neck over Baeza. So again, as I say, Kentucky Derby sets up Sovereignty as the top of the class, and he maintained that, proving very proficient at 1.25 miles throughout the year, starting in that Kentucky Derby win and continuing on. But it set up a nice season with Journalism as well. And Baeza, again, 1, 2, 3 on the 3-year-old scene, it seemed like, throughout the year, and kind of kicked that off in the Kentucky Derby. We'll also watch the Preakness, because that's going to set up a little bit later, Sovereignty and Journalism. Preakness was a skip for Sovereignty, which was again a little bit controversial, but Sovereignty sits on the sidelines for the Preakness. Journalism, no. Journalism is going to win. Again, kind of solidifying his number 2 spot in the pecking order of the 3-year-old. Journalism, Gosker, a nice second at 15-1. Sandman, the aforementioned Sandman, number 7, runs third. But Journalism, Umberto Rispoli, Mike McCarthy and company for Eclipse Thoroughbreds and company, getting it done in the Preakness. And as I say, that sets up a little bit later in the year when these two will knock heads once again. And we'll see some of that when we come back from the break. But there's kind of your first half of the season. When we come back, we'll shift our attention and look at some races up at Saratoga that made a little noise. And again, these are also going to be races that will play into year-end honors, certainly in many of these divisions. So a little more racing action from 2025 coming up in review. Stay tuned.
Want to get your career in horse racing off to a fast start? Well, the University of Arizona's Racetrack Industry Program is your winning ticket. The Racetrack Industry Program has served as a springboard to some of the industry's most successful individuals, with a proven track record of job placement right out of college. If you want to earn a degree in the exciting horse racing industry, the Racetrack Industry Program can put you in the winner's circle.
The championship season is on at Gulfstream Park with great horse racing action Thursday through Sunday. Come out and enjoy the world's best horses, trainers, and jockeys as they compete over the Hallandale Beach Oval all season long. Take your experience up a notch and join us in 10 Palms Restaurant with unbeatable track views, outstanding dining, and convenient wagering options. For reservations, event schedules, tickets, and more, head to GulfstreamPark.com.
Sometimes it pays to go with the flow, to check your worries at the door, to reconnect with your crew, to follow the thrills and the flavor, to roll with it and see where it takes you, to enjoy every minute to its fullest, and to dance like there's no tomorrow. You can do that here at Rivers Casino and Resort Schenectady, where the good times flow.
Welcome back to Racing Across America. Seth Merrow in the studio again. We take this a little earlier this week as I am out of town, but using the time to recap some of the major races from 2025, and they'll play into Eclipse Awards, but they're also just kind of fun to go back and look at. A lot of the ones I picked are 3-year-olds, including the Belmont Stakes, which was up here at Saratoga this year. Being at Saratoga, it was 1.25 miles, but it also features another showdown between the Derby winner, Sovereignty, and the Preakness winner, Journalism. And we'll watch the stretch run of the Belmont, where it will be Sovereignty getting it done pretty easily. The chart margin winds up to be 3 lengths. I was really happy with the price in the Derby with Sovereignty, but I thought $7 in the Belmont was okay as well. The favorite was actually Journalism at 2-1. 5-2 was Sovereignty, but it was 2 Sovereignty getting it done over 7 Journalism. Number 6 Baeza runs third. Again, solidifying that 1, 2, 3 pecking order for those 3, which seem to be maintained throughout the year. Rodriguez for Bob Baffert ran 4th in here, but Sovereignty in the Belmont Stakes up at Saratoga gets it done. Again, continuing his dominance of the division and kind of showing an absolute affinity for that 1.25 mile trip He winds up with, in the Kentucky Derby, a 104 buyer, and in the Belmont Stakes, Sovereignty, a 109 buyer. So again, relishing that 1.25 miles, certainly. Picked up another race, this from the proper Saratoga meet, a little bit later on, August 16th. It was the Alabama. We are going to watch Nitrogen, who, as I say, a lot of these races we'll look at, we'll play in the year-end honors. I would think Nitrogen is sitting right there for a 3-year-old filly Eclipse Award, given the fact that she started the career on the turf. That Belmont Stakes meet at Saratoga, Nitrogen ran in the Wonder Again, which was washed off the turf and seemed to relish the dirt. She went off that Wonder Again in an off the turfer by 17 lengths. Mark Casse came back in the Belmont Oaks Invitational, which was July 4th weekend up at Saratoga, and just missed on the turf. But he had said after that Wonder Again, maybe we can, kind of choose our spots now. He did choose the spot of the Alabama on this August 16th date, and Nitrogen goes off as the second choice behind Brad Cox's and Godolphin's Good Cheer. Good Cheer at 7-5 winds up second, and pretty convincingly beaten second. It's almost a couple of lengths. Nitrogen gets it done. Puts on a grade 1 win on the dirt. Subsequently finished a close-up second in the Spinster against Older on the dirt at Keeneland, and ran in the Breeders' Cup Distaff and ran second to Older Silla as well. But she has the grade 1 Alabama on the dirt on her resume, and some graded stakes on the turf as well. So that be able to kind of bounce back and forth on the surfaces. I think she's sitting on potentially a 3-year-old filly Eclipse Award, and the Alabama will be a large part of that, certainly. All right, let's go to the highlight of the Saratoga meet. It is the Travers, of course. This was run on August 23rd, and Sovereignty is again going to show dominance at 1.25 miles. After we saw he and Journalism face off in the Belmont Stakes. Journalism subsequently went and won the Haskell, ran second in the Pacific Classic. Stuck out in Southern California for that Pacific Classic, which was understandable. Sovereignty, therefore, faces a field of 4 opponents. They were all kind of outmatched, as noted by the 10-length win in the Travers. It was kind of fun. Bracket Buster runs a good second for Vicky Oliver and BBN Racing. And I was down the winner's circle afterwards. They were thrilled. Second place finish in a $1 million plus race to the 3-year-old champ. They were perfectly happy, Bracket Buster. And Bracket Buster at 17-1 runs second, subsequently went on to win the Oklahoma Derby. So nice little launching pad for Bracket Buster there to make a little noise for some connections. So again, we're ecstatic with the situation. But Sovereignty, again, continuing to stamp his dominance of the 3-year-old division and the proficiency at 1.25 miles. He had come out of that 109 buyer in the Belmont with a 104 buyer in the Jim Dandy at 1.125 miles, but then came back in the Travers and showed how much he likes 1.25 miles. 115 buyer in the Travers. And again, subsequently, would have loved to have seen him in the Breeders' Cup Classic with, the 1.25 mile trip, but a little setback for Sovereignty coming in, a little fever, and went to the sidelines. Still kind of waiting to see what's up and whether we'll see him back. We'll keep our fingers crossed on Sovereignty to see him back as a 4-year-old. But it was just a fabulous 3-year-old season, certainly. And again, a clear 3-year-old Eclipse winner there. You would certainly have to think. Let's move on the same Travers Day card was also the Forego, and the Forego is notable because of the win by Bookham Dano, who unfortunately we didn't get to see him in the Breeders' Cup Sprint, and we had trainer Derek Ryan on loose on the lead right after the Forego win, and it seemed like he was set at that point that the Breeders' Cup wasn't going to be in the mix. But it was unfortunate because I would have liked to have seen him, put his real stamp on the division. I think probably did enough anyway as far as the sprint eclipse. And if you listen to people, it seems like that's going to be the way. But we'll look at the Forego. Bookham Dano will be the number 4 horse. Get it done here at 4-5. Scotland runs second. Crazy Mason runs third. But this is notable not only because of this win, a grade 1 win in the Forego to wind up the season for Bookham Dano. 4 wins and 5 starts. But 3 of those wins were up at Saratoga in graded stakes sprint races. The Forego, the grade 1 on Travers Day. But before that, middle of July, he'd won the grade 2 Vanderbilt. And on Belmont Stakes weekend at Saratoga, he'd won the grade 3 True North. Just a string that, these days, 21st century, certainly with the spacing horses like between, and the fact that this year there was some opportunities with an extra Belmont Stakes weekend, which allowed for some of that spacing. But to wind up with 3 graded stakes races, graded stakes wins at Saratoga, very good. And again, it was fun. You can go watch the replay of the Derek Ryan interview Steve Bick and I did on Loose on the Lead. I think that's going to be included in our package of interviews on Christmas Day as well. But it was fun to talk to Derek Ryan, kind of a guy who, a trainer that is maybe a little under the radar for some people, but to get a big horse like this, good for him. And again, it was a very nice season for Bookham Dano, highlighted and wound up being the last race of the season in the grade 1 Forego. Nice win there. Paco Lopez on board. He was on board for all of those wins up at Saratoga. And finally, to wind up our Saratoga look, same day. It was Travers Day on the undercard, Personal Ensign, and it will be number 7, Torpedo Anna at 75 cents to the dollar, getting it done. Number 4, Darth Vader will run second. Leslie's Rose runs third. Randomized runs 6th in here. Very good horse for Chad Brown, but on that day, struggled a little bit after having set some early fractions. But Torpedo Anna gets it done under Brian Hernandez and gets it done barely over Darth Vader. It was a chart margin is a nose, but does get it done. And that wound up to be the last win of the season. Subsequently, Torpedo Anna went into the Spinster. Brian Hernandez on the sidelines with an injury. Flavian Prat was on board in the Spinster and wound up 4th in there. Ken McPeak came out of that and said, I think we've done enough with her. And Ken McPeak was really generous with the horse. She became a fan favorite. Part of that was the McPeak. Hey, the workout's going to be the last couple of seasons up at Saratoga. Workout should be on the track at this time tomorrow up Oklahoma. Come see her. After he announced the retirement after the Spinster, closing day at Keeneland, walked her through the paddock for the fans, and then the next day, opening day at Churchill, walked her through the paddock for the fans. And again, she was a fan favorite, deservedly so, already with an Eclipse Award under the belt. But I think she's probably done enough with the win in the Personal Ensign with a 100 buyer figure earlier this year. She won the Grade 1 Apple Blossom as well. 4 wins and 6 starts with, again, a couple of nice Grade 1s on the resume. And the winner of the Breeders' Cup Distaff was Scylla. And I just don't think she's done enough. That was her only win this year. If the Breeders' Cup is an exclamation point on the season, then you can make the case that that's the tipping point if you're weighing horses. But with the only that win, Scylla's a nice horse, and it was a nice front-end win for Bill Mott in the Breeders' Cup. But she probably hadn't done enough. So Torpedo Anna probably picks up another Eclipse Award this year as the older female. And finally, let's take a look on our review at Highlight of the Year. with the Breeders' Cup Classic on November 1st at Del Mar. And it's going to be Forever Young, who, interesting season for Forever Young. This was the fourth start and the third win, so a very light season. Came back from an April layoff to win a stakes race in Japan on October 1st. And then second start off a long layoff, comes and wins the Breeders' Cup Classic and looks pretty good doing it. Sierra Leone makes a run. Forever Young got I think a little bit of a better trip, and Forever Young getting it done by a chart margin of half a length over Sierra Leone. Number 1, Fierceness runs third. Number 9, Journalism, fourth in there. Baeza was sixth. So it was a nice field in here, but Forever Young getting it done and kind of, validating what he did in the United States last year with the third in the Kentucky Derby and the third in the Breeders' Cup Classic. Everybody was waiting for this horse to kind of step forward as the Japanese runners over the past, 3 years now have gone internationally and done very well, and Forever Young just adds to that. Now, with the light campaign and the only United States win being the Breeders' Cup Classic, by default, I'm kind of feeling like maybe Sovereignty winds up with the Horse of the Year in here, even though sitting on the sidelines on Breeders' Cup weekend. But as I say, I'm not sure for a lot of people there's going to be enough there for Forever Young to pull the trigger for the United States Horse of the Year. It was a nice performance, certainly, and he is a fabulous horse. Forever Young, 13 starts, 10 wins. But is it enough, the 4-start season and only one win in the United States? We'll see. He had started the season with a win in the Saudi Cup, then third in the Dubai World Cup, won that prep race in Japan, and then wins the Breeders' Cup. As I say, I don't think, but we'll see what the voters decide as far as the Eclipse Award. But I'm guessing Sovereignty with his campaign probably does get it done. A Kentucky Derby win, a Belmont win, a Travers win. Pretty solid season for Sovereignty. So we'll see when all is said and done with the voting for the Eclipse Awards. I would guess the ballots will go out in the next couple of weeks along with past performances. And I will tell voters, hold on, watch those races opening day, that opening week at Santa Anita. It always, people post their ballots. It's like, wait, there's still some interesting races to be run. Hold your horses there, sports fans. But that'll be happening over the next couple of weeks as we get to the year end, and the year-end honors will be decided. It's going to be interesting. I think a lot of the categories seem settled, but there are a couple of categories that I think are far from settled. So it'll be fun to watch this year. All right, let's take another break. When we come back, we'll do some news and notes from 2025 as things are wrapping up for the season. Stay tuned. Back in a couple.
Want to get your career in horse racing off to a fast start? Well, the University of Arizona's Racetrack Industry Program is your winning ticket. The Racetrack Industry Program has served as a springboard to some of the industry's most successful individuals, with a proven track record of job placement right out of college. If you want to earn a degree in the exciting horse racing industry, the Racetrack Industry Program can put you in the winner's circle.
The championship season is on at Gulfstream Park with great horse racing action Thursday through Sunday. Come out and enjoy the world's best horses, trainers, and jockeys as they compete over the Hallandale Beach Oval all season long. Take your experience up a notch and join us in 10 Palms Restaurant with unbeatable track views, outstanding dining, and convenient wagering options. For reservations, event schedules, tickets, and more, head to GulfstreamPark.com.
Sometimes it pays to go with the flow, to check your worries at the door, to reconnect with your crew, to follow the thrills and the flavor, to roll with it and see where it takes you, to enjoy every minute to its fullest, and to dance like there's no tomorrow. You can do that here at Rivers Casino and Resort Schenectady, where the good times flow.
Welcome back. Seth Merrow Racing Across America on a Saturday morning. Again, pre-taped. I'm out of town this weekend. Be back in next week, certainly, and in through the holidays. Don't forget, if you're a New York fan, jump in this weekend because this wraps things up. After this weekend, New York taking a holiday break. But as I mentioned earlier, Oaklawn in the mix, and we're a couple of weeks into Tampa, a couple of my favorite wintertime tracks. So there's still plenty of great action leading into the holidays and beyond. Going to hit on some news and notes here from the year of 2025. And one of the things that's going to be a lot of fun to watch going forward over the next couple of weeks through the end of the year is the jockey battle for earnings. And it was noted, about a week ago now, maybe, Irad Ortiz had a win down at Gulfstream that gave him the record annual earnings mark of just over $39,000. And it was noted then, early in December, he's still got a month left. He may go over 40 million, but he crossed 39 million and changed, which was a previous record. So he became the record holder again for earnings for a jockey in a year, Irad Ortiz. But Flavien Prat is also over 39 million. And again, we are, still with some time. Now, December isn't a huge stakes month necessarily as compared to some other times of the year. But there are races with some purses out there that, these guys can go chase and chase 40 million. And not only chase 40 million, chase each other. So it's going to be interesting to watch on the earnings side of things. Irad Ortiz and Flavien Prat. You can check those numbers out over on Equibase. You go up to the top and click on the leaderboard and click on leader by year. And then you can pick jockeys and trainers. So Irad and Flavien are kind of sitting there at 39,000. Jose Ortiz at 39 million. Jose Ortiz with 33 million. Luis Saez with 26. Johnny Velazquez with 21 million sits at number 5 on the earnings list. Again, just he's incredible. As far as wins, that'll be a little bit interesting as well. But Irad Ortiz has a kind of a comfortable margin. It's comfortable. There's still a month left. But Irad Ortiz, 334 wins for the year. Paco Lopez, 317. Jose Ortiz, 307. Flavien Prat, 294. And Michael Sanchez with 288. Luis Saez is sitting in 6th, so he's right there as well. But again, that earnings total is going to be fun to watch over the next few weeks as we head to the end of the year. Since I pulled up the jockeys, I thought I'd also pull up the trainers and just kind of do a little comparison there. On the earnings side of things, Brad Cox is in the lead with 29 million and change. Chad Brown second, 24 million. Steve Asmussen, 23 million. Mark Casse, 22. Todd Pletcher, 18. Bill Mott, 16. Safi with 16 as well as his Mike Maker. Brendan Walsh, great year for him, 15 million. He's number 9 on the earnings list. Bob Baffert, number 10. Ken McPeak, 11. That's the earnings list. I was surprised the wins list, not shocked, but surprised. Jamie Ness on top of the wins list for the trainers so far this year with 336. Steve Asmussen, 309. Brad Cox, 265. And I'm surprised because Jamie Ness has always been kind of a high percentage guy. But it seemed like over the past few years, a little under the radar. It still was very good, but it seemed a little under the radar as compared to maybe 8 or 10 years ago. But there he is, top of the list. I think at this point, I think he's kind of park-spaced, but 336 wins so far. Again, Steve Asmussen, 309. Brad Cox, 265. Anthony Ferrier, 232. And Mark Casse, 225. Safi, 206. Mike Maker, 201. Chad Brown, 197. Linda Rice, 180. So she's right up there as well. So some familiar names. But Jamie Ness on top as far as wins for the trainers so far this year. I mentioned, obviously, when we were going over the recap, last year we had Belmont Stakes up here at Saratoga, which will happen again this year for the last time. Belmont scheduled to open in the fall. Haven't heard, and I might have missed it, but I don't think so. I haven't heard a schedule for that point in the year at NYRA. And the question mark is, they will be up here for Belmont Stakes, yes. But last year, they were up for Belmont Stakes, and then they came up and had a July 4th weekend that was still technically Belmont, but it was Belmont at Saratoga. But then because of the calendar, a few days later, Saratoga opened. And so people were kind of, opening day at Saratoga had lost a little of its specialness. There was kind of 3 opening days. There was the Belmont Stakes weekend, there was July 4th weekend, then a few days later, there was the traditional Saratoga opening day. This year, Labor Day is as late as it can be, September 7th. So if they're up for the July 4th weekend, that would lead into a little more of a break that wouldn't necessarily make sense. So I'll be interested to see how that all works out. I've said with, Aqueduct closing, they should have maybe some kind of celebration down there. Have a big weekend down there where it's at the end of Aqueduct, and I think they'd get a good crowd and folks kind of getting their last shot. But it'll be interesting to see how it pans out this year as compared to last year, because again, that late Labor Day means there's a later start for traditional Saratoga, so it would just change things up a little bit. But as I said, we know Belmont's going to be up here, but as far as that extra weekend that we had last year, I haven't seen anything for sure. Other news from 2025 that is a little bit notable. You go back to earlier this year, the Florida decoupling situation. That was major news, and I think remains major news. Now, luckily, they kind of fought it back. But if you're not familiar, the owners of Gulfstream, Belinda Stronach, and the folks who own the track were attempting to get legislation passed that would decouple the requirement that to have the slot machines at Gulfstream, they also have to support horse racing. And that was kind of the law of the land, not just for Gulfstream, but for all of the tracks and all of the harness tracks and all of the dog tracks. And eventually they did decouple the dog tracks and then did away with dog racing. And they decoupled harness racing and Pompano. And, the fear is, and I think it's a completely realistic fear, if they decouple, get your slot machines, and then you can do away with the track and develop the property, which admittedly has value that it probably didn't have 10 or 20 or certainly 30 or 40 years ago, being right there, in the Hallandale location with the beach not too far away. And so there's some value to the property. But the upshot is this decoupling legislation pushed by the Stronach people was obviously a threat to horse racing, which was a threat to breeding in the state and more. For a while, when this news came out earlier this year, it looked like, they got the head start and this may happen. But then the racing industry kind of came together and pushed back a little bit and fought back the legislation. But it's still floating out there, so we'll see. Some news came out from the Arizona Symposium this week that folks are looking to maybe have a new track in Ocala. There is legislation already in place that would kind of permit that. How would that work, and how popular would that be? The population center is not the same in Ocala as it is down in that South Florida area. But again, the wintertime, Florida is such an important part of the American racing circuit and calendar. We'll see how that all works out. But that was an important news issue earlier this year and continues. And part of that is just looking at the overall scene in America, which has bright spots, but also has some, threatening, thunderclouds, as it were, like in South Florida. But Southern California, Stronach owning Santa Anita, there's some concern there. Northern California no longer racing. Del Mar this summer, I think, did well. That was one of the bright spots. But when you're kind of an island out there, it's harder to fill fields, which is hard everywhere now. And so Southern California is maybe a little bit of a spot that people are looking at and keeping our fingers crossed, particularly given the news last week that up in Canada, towards the west coast of Canada, Hastings which has been a track for over 100 years, a player on the Canadian racing scene, they're going to stop racing at Hastings. There will be no 2026 season there. So again, another track bites the dust, so to speak, and it's concerning. Now, that said, again, there are bright spots. I think Tampa does very well in the wintertime. Oaklawn clearly has kind of resurged over the past 5 years or so with the appearance of some slots there. Kentucky, with their historical horse racing machines and the money they have, Kentucky is kind of the pinnacle of the mountain, you would say, with, again, that extra money. Kentucky Downs, obviously, with that rich meat. The Turfway in the wintertime has kind of stepped up. Ellis in the summertime, the same. And I would say Horseshoe Indy has become kind of a bright spot as well. They had a nice meet despite some crazy weather early in the meet. So there are some bright spots out there, but some concerns as well that were brought up and kind of came to the forefront with that Florida situation earlier this year. Another note of concern has been the CAWs, which folks on social media, Twitter in particularly, have really picked up on. And one of the things about it is, I think a lot of the comments we see on social media are uninformed, for lack of a better term. And I'm not blaming people. The folks who are kind of behind the CAWs and the wagering platforms they use, I think have to step out and be a little more proactive about explaining the whole CAW situation. I have questions, and I read all the articles. There was a nice panel earlier this week at the Arizona Symposium that had Scott DeRudy, who is with one of the CAW wagering platforms, David O'Rourke from NYRA, which is a partner on that platform. There was some answering of questions. Marshall Graham, who one of the smartest guys in racing, had comments that were maybe a little more from the better side perspective, and from Indiana Grand, Horseshoe Indy. They also had a representative out there talking a little bit about how they address some of these issues with the CAWs and whatnot. But it's interesting, the more I hear, the more I learn. And again, the more I look at what's written on social media and think, I'm not sure they're on it. They're coming at this from a wrong angle, the more it's explained. Not to say the CAW situation doesn't need to be addressed in some form, but I think to properly address it and to properly criticize, to maybe move towards better solutions, people have to be better informed. And part of that is these wagering platforms that are permitting the CAWs, I think, have to put some information out there. Scott DeRudy in the symposium panel last week said at one point they had randomly selected 31 races from Santa Anita last year, and in 11 of them, the CAWs had not won, whereas I think people on social media think they win every race. And it's not true. And if they don't win, that's a benefit to the retail bettor. So I think there are some things that need better explanations. And with a lot of bettors now looking at these CAWs and saying, I can't go against these guys, I'm stepping back, I think we need a better explanation from people. So that would be my recommendation for 2026 for the folks that have the information on these groups to be a little more transparent about it, so that, again, things can be addressed to maybe help level the playing field. David O'Rourke did note that in NYRA, within the next few weeks, they're going to start shutting off the CAWs 1 minute to post, which hopefully will help. And he said that they will then kind of look at that information and maybe make changes down the road as well. But NYRA's been, as compared to other tracks anyway, has been a little more proactive about addressing it. The tax legislation, wanted to hit on that as well. That was a notable piece of information from last year. The big, beautiful bill had a little piece of legislation in it that said gamblers can no longer deduct 100% of their losses. You can deduct 90%. And to me, it's a complete head scratcher. And people who are far more plugged in than I, including Marshall Graham. He had a nice explanation yesterday on Steve Bick's show. He was on the panel, the symposium. But when I say yesterday, it would have been last Tuesday. If you want to pull up a replay, Marshall Graham was on with Steve Bick on the radio and talked a little bit about that tax legislation. And just kind of give some example numbers for big bettors. And this may not be something that's going to affect you or I or just that the average kind of weekend player. But a lot of guys push money through the pools that keeps the whole thing liquid and going. And, you know, for bettors that maybe push $1 million, let's say somebody puts $1 million in a year. They bet $1 million, and let's say they lose $1 million. So at the end of the year, they lose $1 million, they win $1 million. So at the end of the year, it's a wash. Well, it's not a wash as far as the IRS is concerned. You win $1 million, you lose $1 million, but out of losses, you can only claim $900,000. So as a bettor, this person is broken even, but they have to pay taxes on $100,000. And as some of the folks have said, that just isn't sustainable for a lot of these players. And so if that tax law continues, you will see a lot of big players just step out of the game. And again, it's going to hurt the liquidity of the pool size, and it's going to touch everybody. Now, there have been proposed legislations to kind of address this, but at this point, they're still pending. Hopefully, early in 2026, we'll hit some of those and they'll be acted on. But again, you never know. Fingers crossed. But again, that is something to watch because it's just, it would be unsustainable. And again, immediately when the legislation was passed, there was pushback, not just from horse racing, but obviously Las Vegas and casinos. This will hit any kind of gambling entity. And as I say, it's a head scratcher to begin with. Who came up with this idea? You win $1 million, you lose $1 million, so you break even, but you don't get to claim the entire, you can only claim the $900,000, so you have to pay taxes on $100,000 you didn't win. The concept is just kind of crazy. But again, we'll see what happens over the next month or so as far as that is concerned. And finally, just wanted to note the passing of trainer D. Wayne Lucas last year. Just amazing. In his 80s, he was still getting up on the horse every morning. He was for years and years a fixture at Saratoga, including in recent years in the morning on his horse. And a couple of years ago, thanks to our friend Tim Wilkin, he helped me get Wayne Lucas over to sit in with me. I've been trying to get him for a few years and hadn't been successful, but he came over and sat in on the backstretch up at Saratoga one morning. Great conversation with him. Again, that was a couple of summers back, but I pulled up stats from Wayne Lucas. Just under 5,000 victories in the career, 4,953 wins in the career, over $300 million in earnings. Hall of Fame in 1999. I mean, that's, like I say, he's still getting up on horses in the morning. Earlier this year, some 26 years after he was put in the Hall of Fame. Eclipse Award-winning trainer 1994, 1987, 86, 85, so 4 Eclipse Awards. As recently as 2024, he won the Preakness with Seize the Gray, so he gets a Triple Crown win just a couple of years ago. His first starters were in 1974, so 50 years after his first starter, he gets a Preakness. Again, just incredible. And you can pull up these stats on Equibase, and they're interesting. As I say, he won the Preakness, but you can go down list of Breeders' Cups he's won and whatnot. But you can also pull up on Equibase his top horses, and boy, you talk about a who's who. Top horses for trainer Wayne Lucas. Serena's Song, Steinland, Lady's Secret, Thunder Gulch, Tabasco Cat, Charismatic, Surfside, Open Mind, and on and on and on. So again, just a long and distinguished career for Wayne Lucas, and it was fun to have him around the track for that. Just I read also, got a fun story this past week. Gary Stevens bought his house in Hot Springs. Wayne had been based for a while down at Oaklawn in the winter, and I guess there'd been a few offers on the house, but Wayne's widow said, "Oh no, Gary, you deserve it." And so Gary Stevens was able to buy Wayne Lucas's house down in Hot Springs. So nice story there as well. All right, I'm going to come back one more segment, or there will be one more segment. If you're watching this show on Saturday, I will be back to take a look at some of the stakes action for this afternoon, because again, there's some nice stakes today on this Saturday. If you're watching on Sunday, it's our man Anthony Probst coming up next with League Lockdown. He'll take you through some of the NFL action that is coming up over the next few days. So again, stay tuned. All of that right after this.
The 2025 Global Symposium on Racing. It's the premier networking event of the year. Connect with the who's who of racing. Collaborate face-to-face with key decision makers. Be a part of the international conversation. Discover the latest technology and innovation. Join us December 8th through 10th. Register at racingsymposium.com.
Capital OTB is now streaming live on Roku. The RTN Racing channel on Roku lets you watch OTB TV live through your Roku device or your Amazon Fire Stick, rather than being limited to computers and mobile devices, which means you can now watch OTB live wherever you are. Simply open Roku, scroll to find the RTN channel, then click on OTB TV. OTB TV on Roku. Try it now.
The championship season is on at Gulfstream Park. Great horse racing action Thursday through Sunday. Come out and enjoy the world's best horses, trainers, and jockeys as they compete over the Hallandale Beach Oval all season long. Take your experience up a notch and join us in 10 Palms Restaurant with unbeatable track views, outstanding dining, and convenient wagering options. For reservations, event schedules, tickets, and more, head to GulfstreamPark.com.
Welcome back. Seth Merrow in the studio again, pre-taped from earlier this week as I'm out of town, but do have PPs for Saturday afternoon, and we'll take a look at some of the stakes section. Yeah, 4 stakes, one at Aqueduct, a couple at Gulfstream, and one at Oaklawn to take a look at on this Saturday afternoon. 7th race at Gulfstream, the Go for Juan. This is for fillies and mares, 3-year-olds up, going the 1-turn mile. I have a 3, 6, and 2. I'm going to use Weigh the Risks on top, just logical, coming off the stakes win last time, the Pumpkin Pie for Chad Brown and Klarovich. Nice win over this Aqueduct strip at 7. I don't think the distance is going to be any obstacle, as this horse has conquered it before successfully. So, logical, not much of a price probably on that one. Stonewall Star in the 2nd spot for Horacio De Paz. Statebred coming out of a 2nd place in a Statebred stakes race, but did it with a buyer that matches up with the last race for Weigh the Risks. So in good form now. Again, another one where I don't think the mile is going to be any obstacle. So we'll go the 3 over the 6 and Scalable in the 3rd spot. Todd Pletcher runner that was 3rd behind Weigh the Risks in the Pumpkin Pie last time. Kendrick Carmouche hops on board. Third start back off much of the season on the sidelines, January to September. Came back in September and kind of clunked in the Gallant Bloom, but improved nicely in the Pumpkin Pie. If that continues in the 3rd start back, the Pletcher Rapoli filly could be a little bit intriguing in here as well. So in the 7th at Aqueduct, the Go for Juan, 3, 6, and 2. Gulfstream Park, again, a couple of nice stakes for the girls and the boys on turf. The girls are in the Tropical Park Oaks, $125,000. 3-year-old fillies, 1.16 on the grass. I'm 2, 3, 5, and 6. Going to put number 2, Super Wilwa, on top. Super with an O, an OU. So it's got to be Live Oak Plantation. Mike Trombetta trainee coming out of a win off sitting on the sidelines most of the summer and early fall, a win on the comeback in October, late October at Laurel. Overall, this horse has shown some ability for the team, and I think comes into this in good form and probably a deserved shot at a little stakes action in here. might get a little value. I'll put that one on top. And one more time goes out for Mark Cassie and Live Oak Plantation. Like the top pick, a little bit lightly raced, comes in off a nice win, off a layoff. This one laid off from September last year until September this year. The comeback up at Woodbine on the turf was very good. So again, these are two similar runners for Live Oak in that the records and the current form, I think they're both very playable. And Mischief in Motion in the third spot. Gulfstream Park stakes try last time, showed some punch before fading a little bit late, but held on for second. But I think off of that last race is very, very playable in here. I like that, a lot of times you get kind of a front-endish run and they fade a little bit. The next time they can hold on a little bit more. We'll see how that works today. But for me, in the 8th at Gulfstream, the Tropical Park Oaks, 2, 3, 5, and 6. The 11th race at Gulfstream will be for the boys. That division that I like quite a bit, and part of the reason is you get nice stakes races for the 3-year-olds on the turf almost all across the country all year long. And this kind of wraps things up for those 3-year-olds on the turf down in South Florida. Mile and a 16th on the grass. I'm going to go with our friend Jack Knowlton and Saratoga and Tiz Dashing off the win in the Hill Prince last time. Don't forget, Saratoga, they purchased some yearlings at Saratoga last summer. We had Jack in a few weeks ago talking about that. And if you're interested in partnerships, maybe that's something to look into. Check out the Saratoga website for contact information and give them a shout if you think it's something you might be interested in. That the horses they bought all sound, you're looking at the breeding with the yearlings, all sounded interesting, and they're definitely a fun group. So keep that in mind. But Tiz Dashing gets the stakes win last time up in New York. Comes down to Florida for Barclay Tag. Javier Castellano sticking on board. I'll go with Tiz Dashing on top. Layabout going out for Patrick Biancone off a just miss in a stakes last time right here at Gulfstream Park. Overall has been in good form going back to May. We had a string of 3 wins broken by a close-up 4th place at Kentucky Downs in a stake, and then that near miss last time. I think this one very, very playable. Layabout, and then Candy Town going out for Todd Pletcher, who's kind of been in the mix the last 2 trying stakes company. One of those that I have a feeling is maybe a little bit better than that recent record. Wouldn't be shocked to see this one move forward a little bit today off a couple of 4th place finishes. It was the beaten favorite last time at 3-1, kind of a lukewarm favorite. But again, I just think that horse is better than that recent record. In the 11th at Gulfstream, the Tropical Park Derby, I have a 3, 6, 10, and 7. And finally, we'll wrap it up at Oaklawn. Their opening Saturday stakes race is the Ring the Bell. And if you're not familiar, they have a great little, we should probably do it up at Saratoga because we have a bell there, obviously, that gets rung 17 minutes to post, but the bell is already there. But owners can come into the winner's circle, and after the race, they ring the bell. They commit a portion of their winnings to aftercare. And so if you watch the races, you see many owners walk up after the race, walk over and ring the bell. It's 2 years old, maybe the tradition, but this is the Ring the Bell, $150,000 stake for 3-year-olds and up, going 6 furlongs, and I have it 7, 6, 4, and 3. I thought this race was a head scratcher with Banishing and Skelly having a lot of talent at Oaklawn, but recently maybe not so much. Banishing comes out of a poor performance in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. Before that was 3rd in the Lucas Classic. That was at 2 turns. Won the Charlestown Classic at 2 turns. So again, came out of the 2-turn races and ran poorly in the sprint, or another sprint today. But I couldn't ignore the horse has not missed an exact on 5 starts at Oaklawn. So I tilt there with a little bit of trepidation. Roll On Big Joe, amongst my top 3, is in the best recent form. Comes out of a win in the Bet on Sunshine up at Churchill Downs. So again, comes in decent form. And then Skelly, like Banishing, the recent form is a little bit hard to get excited about, but like Skelly, has shown a real affinity for Oaklawn. 12 starts, 10 wins for Steve Asmussen. So I'll be interested to see on the return to the Arkansas home cooking if Skelly gets back on track today. Again, this one's to me a little bit of a head scratcher, but it'll be fun to see what those horses can do returning to Oaklawn where they've run well. In the Oaklawn 8th, the Ring the Bell, 7, 6, 4, and 3. All right, I'm going to wrap it up for this edition of Racing Across America. Again, Seth Merrow in the studio, although a little bit earlier this week. As noted at the beginning of the show, popped out of town for a little family visit for just a few days. Back in next weekend, however, live. But we tried to use this weekend, this taped version, to do a little recap of some of the 2025 action as we are on the cusp of the end of the year. Looked at some of the big races that will play into Eclipse Awards, tossed out some of the news stories that not only made news this year, but are playing into next year as well, as far as, you know, the overall situation in the industry. And again, I will tell people to keep your eyes on that jockey battle this weekend and beyond. Irad Ortiz and Flavian Prat, both over 39 million in earnings, and they're both right there. Both have the chance to maybe get to 40 million in earnings. And Irad has already set a new record, but anything moving forward from here becomes a new record, regardless of which one it is. So it'll be fun to watch those two. And as I say, you can keep up with that. You go to Equibase and click on the leader link, and then leaders by year. You can pull up the jockey stats day by day as the results become official. All right, before I do step out, do want to remind folks that today, right here at the Clubhouse Racebook, there's a double promotion. It will be the match bet and the King of the Hill contest. And I believe King of the Hill, I'm virtually certain, $800 up for grabs. I can't play, but last weekend I went out to the front. I took the form and I filled out the form and put it up on Twitter, just my imaginary play, because again, in my position, I can't play here at Capital OTB. But my ticket would have, my entry form would have won. Last week it was $700. So it is very doable. Come on down. First few races, your horse has to finish in the top 4. Next couple of races, the top 2, top 3, then the next, the top 2, and then the last race, you have to have the winner. But it's fun, it's doable, and there's $800 up for grabs. That's this afternoon, right here at the Clubhouse Racebook. Come on down, watch the racing, watch all the sports on the weekend, grab a little lunch at Black Bear, have some fun. Clubhouse Racebook, 711 Central Avenue in Albany. All right, wrapping it up for a Saturday morning. Again, pre-taped, but I will be back in next week live. See you then. We'd like to thank Gulfstream Park for their sponsorship of this program and some of the other programming and events here at Capital OTB. Gulfstream Park's championship meet features great racing now through Florida Derby weekend at the end of March.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off-Track Betting.